The game is already starting to slow down for Denver Broncos rookie quarterback Bo Nix. He talked about that as well as gave us 3 words about his thoughts on being third on the initial depth chart. That and more on today's Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Denver Broncos rookie quarterback Bo Nix gave some insight on how the game is slowing down for him. We've got that along with the defense looking impressive in some third down situational work and an end of game situation in which Zach Wilson was the only quarterback to throw a touchdown pass. Welcome, Broncos Country, to another episode of Locked On Broncos, where we are breaking down day 13 of Denver Broncos training camp. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Sayre Bedinger, co-host here at Locked On Broncos, as well as the site expert over there at predominantlyorange.com, where I've been covering the Broncos since 2013. It's been a fun ride, and it's been a fun training camp so far. And we're going to be talking about Bo Nix and his practice once again. Another strong showing from Bo Nix as we get ready for the preseason. Some good stuff from Jarrett Stidham, but some good stuff for the defense as well. Can't leave these guys out, even with the quarterbacks being the focus. But today's episode, Locked On Broncos, is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And Broncos Country, if you haven't already, go ahead, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube so that you can get every episode of Locked On Broncos as soon as it's made available. So the quarterback rotation at day 13 of Denver Broncos training camp was Bo Nix with the first team offense, followed by Jarrett Stidham, followed by Zach Wilson. And that was the order in which they followed throughout the duration of camp as the Broncos continue installation type stuff at practice, not necessarily getting ready for the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, being a preseason game, you're not necessarily going to see the team game planning like they would in a typical week. They're going to take advantage of every rep, every practice that they can throughout the duration of training camp. And for those keeping track at home, Bo Nix has had reps with the first team offense in 6 of the last 9 practices. So I know the depth chart, the initial depth chart that the Broncos released kind of caused a little bit of a stir for some people with Bo Nix listed as the third quarterback on the depth chart, but not even Bo Nix really cares about that. As a matter of fact, he said 3 words when he was asked about his placement of third on the pecking order on the initial depth chart. He said, couldn't care less. And then somebody asked him a follow-up question, and he said, once again, couldn't care less. So I wonder if Bo Nix couldn't care less about the initial depth chart. And frankly, none of us should really care because head coach Sean Payton, as he was kind of asked some follow-up stuff about that, didn't really like being asked about it again. But Sean Payton said, look, all the rookies are at the back of the line on the initial depth chart. It didn't take them long to put together, but it's kind of a common practice. He said it's going to change. And so Broncos Country, fret not, because what we're seeing on the field is not indicative that Bo Nix is the third quarterback. As a matter of fact, he's only been the third quarterback up once in the last 9 days, and that was on a day in which he switched places with Jarrett Stidham. So every quarterback has taken the third reps at least once throughout the course of training camp. But the question is, how did Bo Nix look running with the first team offense once again after practice? Well, he's not only looking good, as we're seeing some clips from practice come in from certain people that are filming from the fan grassy hill over there, which we really appreciate. For those people like me that aren't able to be at every practice or any practices for that matter, just able to kind of get a glimpse into some of the things that are happening. We're not only seeing Bo Nix practice well and make nice throws, make good decisions with the ball, but he says that he's feeling even more comfortable by the day. And Bo Nix was asked after practice, hey, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like the game is slowing down out there for you? And what does this question mean? What does it mean that the game is slowing down? Because you get you hear questions a lot about for quarterbacks, like how are things coming in terms of processing? Are you processing things well? Is the game slowing down for you? What it means is that Bo Nix is really gaining an understanding, a better understanding of the offense, and he's able to execute more without thinking. And you see this a lot of times with guys who run really fast in the pre-draft process, right? They're very fast on a track. They can run a great 40-yard dash, but how fast can they play the game of football? Because those are two very different things. Bo Nix is able to process really quickly. This is something Sean Payton has noted as one of his best assets and attributes is processing. And Nix even said, I was kind of surprised, honestly, when you hear him addressing the media and you get asked a question like, is the game slowing down for you? You expect a little bit more of a, just kind of generic answer. But I mean, Bo was like, yeah, I feel like it is slowing down for me. He said that he feels more comfortable with the playbook more times than not, and what I think he meant by that is like when he's being asked to go out there and execute a play in a situation, like he feels comfortable operating all of the playbook as opposed to just, some of it at this point. So I think he's really gaining a grasp of this offense, which quite honestly was probably the one big edge that Jarrett Stidham had over him going into this training camp, right? Is the fact that Stidham was with the team all of last season, working with Sean Payton, working with Davis Webb, working with this offensive coaching staff and having chemistry with some of the teammates. That was the big advantage that Jarrett Stidham had. But for Bo Nix to come out and say, look, I feel like I'm gaining a better understanding of this offense every single day. I feel like I'm able to execute when asked more often than not. So the game is slowing down from him in that regard. Now, this is a hard thing to talk about when, of course, a guy hasn't played in an actual game or a preseason game even at this point, but you see the signs out there that Bo is making good decisions with the football. You can tell in the clips that are getting shared, like he's not holding on to the ball too long. He's not just kind of checking the ball down every single play. He's keeping his eyes downfield. He's escaping and avoiding pressure, which is another thing that may be the biggest asset that he brings to the table as a rookie quarterback for the Denver Broncos, and a big reason why the offense could be upgraded from what it was a year ago, right? Because a lot of people are wondering, well, how do you take a 10-plus year veteran like Russell Wilson, who just threw 26 touchdowns last year, out of the mix and say that you're going to improve at the quarterback position? Well, we know Russell Wilson took 100 sacks over the last 2 seasons for the Denver Broncos. And Sean Payton recently said that he believes sacks are more of a quarterback stat than an offensive line stat. And he noted early this offseason that taking sacks or taking unnecessary sacks was one of the biggest areas that they wanted to upgrade when they were looking at making a change at the quarterback position. So we know that was an area of frustration last year for Sean Payton, and we saw that frustration kind of boil over in a game against the Houston Texans late in the year where the Broncos were 0 for 13 on third downs. Russell Wilson taking some unnecessary sacks, not throwing the ball away to live to play another down. There was a lot of frustration last year in terms of what he was doing operating the offense. This year could be a lot different. Bo Nix is running the offense and he's comfortable with it, which is great news for the Denver Broncos as we get ready to kind of find out. Hopefully sometime later this week, we'll know who exactly is going to be starting against the Colts. Kind of expect it to be Jarrett Stidham at this point, but we certainly believe we're going to see a lot of Bo Nix and probably quite a bit of Zach Wilson in that game as well. But although the quarterbacks are the focus, the Denver Broncos defense is putting up a fight at practice, believe it or not, and they are having guys stand out on a daily basis. And the Denver Broncos defense was money on the money down. We're going to tell you exactly how the Broncos defense dominated a third down emphasis period up next on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by Game Time. I love being able to go to a Major League Baseball game during the summer and create memories with my family. I just got the chance to do that a few weeks ago, watching the Chicago Cubs take on the Kansas City Royals. And you know what? We're always looking forward to making those new memories. And what we don't want to have to do is all this guesswork leading up to getting tickets for a baseball game. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. And so with killer last minute deals, all in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time, they take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And one of the ways they take the guesswork out is by allowing you to customize your spot. You can get a visual of your seat at the game or whatever event you're considering before you even take that seat, before you even purchase the ticket. So with those priority last minute deals, the all-in pricing, the seat views, and the lowest price guarantee, you can take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Denver Broncos defense came through during a big third down emphasis period, not just from the first team, but the second and third team defense as well, including our first forced fumble of Denver Broncos training camp. We're going to talk all about it on today's episode of the show, but want to say thank you to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. And you know that you can subscribe to Locked On Broncos anywhere that you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to do so. It gets the show out in front of more members of Broncos Country, and that's exactly what we want here on the show. And for your second listen of the day, maybe you're like me, you need help with your fantasy football draft preparation this year. Check out Locked On Fantasy Football and get all that you need to be equipped and ready for your fantasy draft, as well as throughout the season. We need to be picking up guys off the waiver wire, because you know what? As much as I listen to people's advice in drafting, I'm always going to need to be adding guys throughout the season. So go ahead, check out Locked On Fantasy Football for your second listen of the day. Let's talk about the Denver Broncos defense. And I think that, a lot of times we get caught up in the quarterback conversation, and not necessarily caught up in it, but I think everybody wants the updates on quarterbacks every single day. So the defense can kind of get lost in the shuffle when a lot of times the standout takeaways from practice during a quarterback battle are going to be those areas of the team, right? But a lot of times the defense does get overlooked, but not on this day for the Denver Broncos, in which Sean Payton said they were really emphasizing third down. And that's a huge point of contention for this team last year. I mean, Sean Payton noted earlier in the week that one of the areas this team was terrible at this past year was the short red zone area. Well, third down offensively wasn't far behind that. And certainly early in the season defensively, they got a little bit better as the season went along, but third down on either side of the ball was not necessarily an area of strength for the Denver Broncos, if we can put it as nicely as possible. But the defense won the day here. I'm going to pull up Cody's notes from practice to kind of paint the picture exactly for you what we were looking at here. Bo Nix took the first series for the Denver Broncos on a 3rd and 2. Bo Nix tried to hit an out to Greg Dulcich, may or may not have been sacked by Jonathan Cooper in a game situation. The very next play, Nix was forced to scramble out of the pocket because of Jonathan Cooper, giving chase on the backside. A bad snap on 3rd and 7 led to a low throw by Bo Nix to Michael Bandy. And on 3rd and 11, another sack. Somebody else tweeted, I believe it was, I can't remember who it was who tweeted during the course of practice, but I remember seeing somebody tweet out to the effect that Jonathan Cooper kind of just wrecked an entire team series out there. So Broncos Country, Jonathan Cooper, he's heating up, and not at any better time than right now as the season is drawing near. Jonathan Cooper out there looking good for the Denver Broncos on the money down, as he is in line to potentially make a lot of money if he can earn an extension from the team. Jarrett Stidham got the second series. The first pass play incomplete. Second play, Lavelle Bailey, the undrafted linebacker out of Fresno State, who's impressed at times throughout the offseason. He got a pressure inside on 3rd and 8, followed by an incompletion and a drop on 3rd and 12 by Thomas Yasman, the rookie tight end out of Utah. So nothing going on for Jarrett Stidham's third down emphasis series. Zach Wilson gets onto the field, and this is where we got our first forced fumble of training camp. Blake Watson, unfortunately, the victim here by Art Green, an underrated cornerback who I know Cody has mentioned on the show before, somebody to watch for during the preseason. Art Green forced a fumble on Blake Watson, the rookie who was kind of fighting for some extra yardage. The ball was recovered by Tanner McAllister, who's one of those young safeties that Sean Payton said maybe they like their depth at the position. Tanner McAllister coming up with the recovered fumble. And the next play, Brandon Johnson bobbles the ball and a defender dropped a near interception. Next play, no gain on a screen that was designed toward the middle of the field. And then the very next play, just a short gain in the flat. So the defense really holding up here in this third down emphasis period. The most notable aspect of this, beyond the forced fumble from Art Green, which you love to see defensive backs making plays on the ball, it looked like he would have stopped him for a pretty short gain, even if there wasn't a forced fumble on the play. It wasn't like it was 10, 15 yards down the field. The biggest takeaway that I have from this, Jonathan Cooper. And I think it gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about Jonathan Cooper, because all offseason, Cody and I have been talking about, well, it seems like the most likely breakout player off the edge is Baron Browning, although we've certainly given our flowers to Jonathan Cooper after a strong year last year. But it kind of feels like, Nick Bonito he had 20 quarterback hits, 8 sacks a year ago. Baron Browning kind of has that elite athletic trait profile. So you expect one of those two guys to become maybe a double-digit sack player for the Broncos. But I believe Cody actually said his prediction is that Jonathan Cooper becomes the next double-digit sack player for the Denver Broncos, and something that this team hasn't had since 2018, when both Von Miller and Bradley Chubb did it in the same year. So we could be in line for another big year from Jonathan Cooper, who has been an ascending player ever since he got into the league out of Ohio State. Just a really exciting overall athlete, somebody who fell in the NFL draft back in 2021 due to some potential issues with his heart. Health checks out. Obviously, Cooper has been a key contributor for this Denver Broncos team, and somebody who he's not only can win with speed, he can win with power, physicality. He's a smart player. He's very, very exciting in terms of younger guys on this team that could step up and become second contract players. And you love to see the stretch of dominance. And that's something that we've kind of gotten used to from Cooper is these heat check stretches where he suddenly is just unstoppable off the edge for periods of time. Not that we necessarily see Cooper disappear at times, but there are definitely stretches where, man, he can take over a series and he can impact all 3 plays. He can get a pressure, get a quarterback knockdown. He could have a sack, could have a forced fumble, could have a pass batted at the line of scrimmage. Whatever the case may be, Cooper is one of those guys that can get hot for the Denver Broncos defense. And I do believe he could be the whole situation with this team right now is so many guys that you're relying on. Well, can he be the best version of himself? Can he take that step forward? Can the Broncos take this player and become, a known who was previously an unknown? I think Jonathan Cooper is one of those guys who is a known commodity on this team, but is steadily ascending. We have seen that from him in his game since he was a rookie, making an impact. Remember that Dallas Cowboys game that he had as a rookie where he's just torching the Dallas Cowboy offensive line. And we've seen that go from just okay, that was a cool kind of flash in the pan, but now we've seen him grow into an every down player for this defense. And I think he's become a core player for this roster going forward. So not trying to overreact to a couple of practice reps, just kind of using those practice reps as an opportunity to highlight Jonathan Cooper and what he brings to this Denver Broncos roster. Speaking of the Denver Broncos roster, there's a couple of guys no longer on the team, Caden Stearns and Justin Simmons. We may know now where those guys are going to be playing coming up next season, potentially both of them resurfacing in the NFC South. We're going to tell you about that, as well as other observations and notes from day 13 of Denver Broncos training camp up next. Locked On Broncos. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and free. And we all want to build the right team. And LinkedIn, it's not just a job board, right? LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but hey, they might be open to the perfect role. And in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses, they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So you're able to find the right new teammate fast. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to do things like this. And LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. And they even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We may know exactly where Denver Broncos former safeties, Justin Simmons and Caden Stearns, could be ending up this season. Could see them in the NFC South with some familiar faces on a couple of different coaching staffs down there. We're going to tell you about Caden Stearns, Justin Simmons, where they could be landing next on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, as well as other news, notes, updates, and just notable goings on from day 13 at Denver Broncos training camp as we ramp up toward this first preseason game against the Indianapolis Colts. But Broncos Country, thank you so much once again for rocking with us every day here at Locked On Broncos. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And certainly, we appreciate you sharing the show with all your other Broncos fan friends out there who want to stay updated and informed on the team every single day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk first really quickly about a couple of former Denver Broncos safeties. Caden Stearns and Justin Simmons could be resurfacing in the NFC South. In case you missed the news, Caden Stearns appears to be resurfacing with the Carolina Panthers and old friend Ejiro Evero. So certainly a connection there with Evero coaching the defensive backs or having a defensive back specialty while being the Denver Broncos defensive coordinator in 2022. Love that landing spot for him. The Panthers were first on the waiver order, so they get first dibs, and they grabbed Caden Stearns immediately. He didn't hit free agency, so his contract is officially off the books and on the Carolina Panthers books now as of this point in time. So that's good news for the Denver Broncos as far as there could be any good news from cutting Caden Stearns, one of the more surprising developments of the week. But one of the most surprising developments of the offseason has been the general lack of interest, at least from the outside looking in, for Justin Simmons, the Broncos' former All-Pro safety, Pro Bowl safety, Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, 30 interceptions since 2016, more than any other player that's come into the league since that. So Justin Simmons is getting an opportunity potentially with the New Orleans Saints, where he would be reuniting with an old friend, Joe Woods, the defensive coordinator there in New Orleans, as well as defensive backs coach Marcus Robertson. Both of those guys were with the Denver Broncos as recently as 2018. And Justin obviously played for Joe Woods for 3 years in Denver. So there's familiarity there in New Orleans, which seems to be sort of a place that, you know, how the Broncos kind of get a reputation for a lot of older guys coming to Denver and finishing out their careers in Denver. It feels like a lot of Broncos defensive backs go to New Orleans to finish out their careers, because we saw Champ Bailey go play, or at least he was there for a little bit in New Orleans. We've seen Chris Harris Jr. went there in 2022. And then before that, Bradley Roby, who played probably the most significant role for the Saints out of any of those guys, another former Denver Broncos defensive back, head to New Orleans. So maybe Justin Simmons will be the latest. Of course, there's the connection between the Broncos and Saints head coach Dennis Allen, but no connection there with Justin Simmons. And we've seen the Saints kind of pick up quite a few former Denver Broncos over the last handful of years. I know there's a lot of jokes that get thrown around by Sean Payton adding a lot of former Saints, which is certainly true, but the Saints have also picked up quite a few former Denver Broncos players. So I think that it's kind of a, a little give and take there, and a little pipeline between these two teams. So we'll see if Justin ultimately does get a deal there. The Saints had a top 10 offense and defense last season, but they don't strike me as necessarily a Super Bowl contender, which is from what I understand, Justin, he wanted to get with a contending team. If he wasn't going to get that big money contract, I don't know. I don't know him personally. I don't know what he's personally looking for, but New Orleans could be the landing spot for Justin Simmons. So we'll certainly keep you updated on that. Even though he's not playing for the Denver Broncos, that could be an interesting story to monitor throughout the rest of the offseason. Sean Payton was asked after day 13 of Denver Broncos training camp what his thoughts were about the defensive front, as it does seem like the defensive front, meaning the defensive line and edge players, have been rather impressive during training camp. Sean Payton kind of got excited when he was asked that question. He said he's looking forward to seeing the defensive front in actual game situations. But specifically, he said that what's standing out so far during camp is the defensive line's leverage and physicality. And I think that is huge news for the Denver Broncos, because they were losing the battle at the line of scrimmage all throughout last season. And why is that? Well, because you don't get leverage and you're not physical enough. Those are the two categories. When you're losing at the line of scrimmage, you're either getting out leveraged, or you're getting out physicaled, or you're getting out both. And that's what the Denver Broncos defensive line really struggled with last season, as we saw them get gashed in the first 7 weeks, followed by they tailed off a little bit at the end of the season as well. And I know injuries and the suspension to Ioma Uwazurike last year played a role in that, but at the same time, it wasn't enough to say, okay, yeah, that Denver Broncos defensive line, they needed a talent influx. They needed new players to come in and bring the heat. And that is exactly what guys like John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, and others have done for this unit. And you put those guys in addition to the already talented players that you have, like Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, who we mentioned before. You get those guys all together. That attitude is infectious. The physicality can be infectious. And certainly those guys are attacking aggressively throughout the course of training camp. We've seen a lot of, potential would-be sacks on the quarterbacks at times, or tackles for loss at the very least. So the defensive front is impressive at camp. Now we get to see them in game situations coming up on Sunday against the Colts. Wide receiver Devon Vele, the rookie out of Utah, stacked another good day on Wednesday. His name came up multiple times in different practice reports, and certainly on Cody's practice notes here. Had a couple of good plays throughout the day of practice, including a long catch and run, a Stidham strike to Vele for 21 plus yards in that final team period, where the Broncos are trying to score from down 26-20, got to have a touchdown to win the game. The very first play from Jarrett Stidham in that second offensive unit, Devon Vele goes for 21 yards, and he also drew a pass interference that Sean Payton says would have got them to the 1 yard line in that situation. So although Jarrett Stidham ended up throwing an interception on his last play of that team series, Devon Vele's two big plays, a 21-yard catch as well as a pass interference drawn on a fourth down play, that would have given the Broncos a chance at 1 yard away with about 12 seconds left on the clock to potentially score the go-ahead touchdown. So Devon Vele continues to impress for the Denver Broncos, which is so exciting because you want to see the rookies step up. And speaking of, Troy Franklin had another couple of big plays, including the only touchdown in that end of game scenario. When Zach Wilson was the quarterback, Troy Franklin caught a touchdown pass for the last play of practice, a third and 12 down in distance with 9 seconds remaining. Zach Wilson throws it up to Troy Franklin. Sounds like it would have potentially been a close play, whether or not Troy got his feet in for the touchdown or not, but that was how the Denver Broncos ended practice. And after practice, head coach Sean Payton said there's no update on cornerback Levi Wallace, no update on safety Brandon Jones. Both of those guys are dealing with hamstring issues right now. Backup running back Tyler Beatty was injured during a special teams drill, had to be helped off the field. We'll see what happens with that situation. and linebacker Justin Strnad returned to practice after missing the last handful of days. So the Broncos getting some of their guys back at linebacker, along with the addition of, as we talked about yesterday, undrafted rookie free agent Alec Mock out of Air Force, who is back on the roster and ready to contribute in the preseason here. But Broncos Country, we're so appreciative of every single one of you for rocking with us every day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you get the latest episodes as soon as they're available. And don't forget, for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Football, where you can get equipped and ready for your upcoming fantasy football drafts. We will be here after day 14, Denver Broncos training camp, to tell you all about what went down, any more quotes from Sean Payton, any more standouts at practice as the Denver Broncos get ready to face off against the Indianapolis Colts in week 1 of the preseason. Sunday, 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff. Broncos Country. We'll see you soon.